when I'd get on calls, people would just, that's a really cool background. I'm like, no, this is my office.
Yeah. You don't know me. Yeah. We're not the same.
Now you do.
Yeah. We're not the same. I promise.
So before something catastrophic happens again, we'll go ahead and start.
Yeah.
By way of introduction, it bears mentioning River McTasney. It's important to mention because you're fast becoming a celebrity and appearing on podcasts and everything. And it's important to mention that I'm not on the River McTasney bandwagon. This is, in fact, the third time that we've attempted this. And that's important to mention because, as we will discuss, both of us are in the software, IT, technology, innovation space. You started much later than me and very quickly flew right by me. And you're way out there in this crazy space. But at the minimum, we're both at least competent professionally. Minimum. And over 2.5 recording sessions, we almost collaborated on a series of the most rudimentary failures in technology that have resulted in like 2.5 hours of conversation being completely lost. So we're going to get it this time, but it is important that we mention that to everybody because, they might think we're wizards, and this helps ground us among the unwashed masses. We're not wizards. Technology's crazy.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, we're very experienced individuals in this space now due to this. So, I mean, I don't want anybody I don't want them to feel as if there's any inauthenticity here, like we're blowing smoke or anything. No, we've just done this. We've just done this a few times, quite literally.
Yeah. I mean, it's. Do you have this experience where now that you've started down the road that you've gone down, do you have family like message you or call you or text you and go, I can't get my computer to work? Do you have that experience?
No, I just, they know I probably won't answer the phone or respond to the text message. And I usually don't.
Trick?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. If you just don't respond enough, they stop trying to reach out to River or to you. That's the,
oh man.
Yeah, that's the trick. It's the cold shoulder. And then whenever they want to send you a birthday gift or something like that, you respond with your address, with your current address. But yeah, anything else, they start to figure it out, right? It's like they realize that if we ask River for help, he's not going to answer. But if we just, we'll only reach out to him then for whenever we need to send him something. So
right, just wait until around your birthday for all the computer questions.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Sometimes they sneak some stuff in, but if you want to know the honest truth on the UI front, I didn't know how to send a calendar invite on Google for until up until 6 months ago. I always just told everybody else to send me one because I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
So,
dude, totally. And I think when I see somebody that I haven't seen in years and who maybe doesn't keep up, and I don't talk about my professional life very much. It's just what I do to put food on the table. Mm-hmm. So when somebody doesn't know, when they're like, what do you do? And I tell them, they go, I'm sorry. It sounded like you said software because that's not possible because you're an idiot. And I'm like, that's all it takes.
Yeah, no, yeah,
It's just
that. I think that's what makes it. I think that's what makes. I think you have to be an idiot to do it, because a sane person does not allow themselves to fail, to just continue to screw up over and over and over. They just don't engage in an activity like that. With software, or software technology, any of this, it's like 100-to-1 fail to success ratio. Nobody else in their right mind is engaging in, you know, in activities or careers or just work in that way. It's like, no, that's not. Doesn't make any sense. We could succeed more over here on this path, so why don't we just do that? And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. So
yeah. I mean, and there's the thing, like there's some geniuses, absolute geniuses in software. But writing software doesn't necessarily equate to delivering a product that is valuable, that makes sense to the end user, that has a job that they want to do in mind, and they know how they need to do it, and they know how to do that job just as well as you know how to build the tool to do it with. The most genius engineer in the world could write beautiful code that's total garbage because it doesn't do the thing right. And I know that when I write stuff, I make engineers very nervous. It's like, why'd you do it like this? Well, because look at what it does. So,
yeah.
But that sort of gets to the thing. Anyway, yeah, no, you go.
No, yeah, I was gonna say that. I mean, we picked up this guy over here at Smooth Ag. He's a senior software engineer. I think he's a few years older than me, and what he is, he's a gunslinger, man. And he's really good and has a ton of patience because I wrote all the most of the code in the field, and I don't write good code. I'm not going to try to lie about it, and but it works, right? And then he took it all and he refactored it and he made it. It looks great. It is great, right? It is freaking beautiful. He didn't change any of my logic really. He just made it into better code. And I think those are the kinds of guys that are freaking the most valuable. Is you got your guys that create and everything, and they're not really getting stuck on writing good code or anything or putting it in the right packages or anything. And then you got your guys that are like, all right, I understand what he's doing here. Let me just make it better so that somebody else can read it. And man, it's been great on that front. This guy's been awesome. Because I'll write in the field and stuff, and I'll push it back up, and he'll pull it back down, and he'll write that in, and it would just kind of go back and forth there within our Scrum process, And he's still doing all the back end. He's doing this Rover stuff on the side. Basically, he's doing all of our back end for our web app and everything. He's much like you on that front, and but yeah, he'll pull it up and fix it, and I'll pull it back down, and there'll be some things that we need to change. But this guy writes code without testing it. Like I have to have the robot right there, or the system right there. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy just doesn't just write it in GitHub itself. Like I don't even know if he pulls it down. You know what I mean? Right. Like just a guy that just freehands it, and within about 30 minutes, I can usually have it spun back up and run it, and then I'll make my additions. Everything we'll just do it again after a certain amount of my going in there and adding a bunch of it's not garbage, but it's something along in that realm, organized chaos.
Yeah. No, those guys are the real wizards.
Yeah.
Because I find the same experience working for the first time in an actual iterative community, lots of people contributing type environment after 20 years of just being a cowboy on the Wild West, just doing whatever I want to do, right? You want to do this thing? Well, here's how we write it and whatever. And I think it's beautiful. It seems like it is, does the trick, and then hand it over to somebody, and sometimes not even hand it over is how it's been. It's been, okay, Dion, I see what you're doing now. Great. Go look at something else. I'm going to fix this. You know? Like,
yeah.
And so, you know, I think to me, that's one of the call signs, the difference between architecture and engineering is,
yeah.
And when you look what happens in a real 3-dimensional meat space environment, what do architects do? They infuriate engineers going, we could do this. And by the way, I've already promised it to the client.
I've already kind of spun it up too. You know?
Yeah.
I know it can be done.
They've already walked through it and they think it's great.
Yeah. So I know just enough that it can be done. I never said it was going to be easy, but that's not my problem.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, yeah.
But you know, and we gone this far. I think everybody should know what exactly we're talking about. You've got Smooth Ag, right? Which is from my perspective, wizardry. So what is it you're doing now since you've left the woods?
Since I've left the woods. We build robots that feed cows. Really, that's the simplest way to put it. They're actually UGVs, unmanned ground vehicles, one of the heaviest payloads right now that you can find in the commercial market. There's only a few companies in comparison out there doing heavy payload. Ours are just tailored specifically to the cattle industry and feed delivery. So we got a 4,000 pound model in production, right? A 4,000 pound payload capable model in production right now, and hopefully within the next 2 years we'll be pushing out a 60,000 in payload, 6,000 pounds in payload capable. So two different use cases, still feed delivery, but if you use your brain, you can tell what the 60,000 pound one is for. Right now, our 4,000 pound is focused on cow-calf in the open range, open pasture environment, and you know, there's so basically replacing a feed pickup. Then you know, everything else on top of that: RTK, GPS, computer vision, machine vision, data collection through computer vision on animals, pasture, weather, climate, you know, communications platform for all the various technologies on the operation, whether that be GPS collars or wireless ear tags or other remote stationary sensors on the pasture. Those are all low power pieces of equipment, so they have to use lower power consuming wireless communication technologies like LoRa. So we have to get those communications to a receiver, a LoRa receiver that then has 3G, 4G, 5G connectivity. Those receivers will eventually stack on the rover. So we're just so at the end of the day, we're feeding cows, collecting data, and serving as a liaison for data communication.
It is somebody who, I don't know if you knew this. I don't know if we talked about it. In my college job for 2 or 3 years was I represented the ag industry at fairs and rodeos around the country, and we just take people, visitors, dignitaries, whatever, through and talk about ag. And I was always fascinated by it and learned enough about it that people asked how many horses I have, which, you know, is an absurd question because I grew up in the city. But point being, I'm fascinated enough by it and have had to talk about and learn enough by it to know that when you called me and you were talking about you were getting into this and what you were doing, instantly I was thinking, oh, holy damn, like it's not just as easy or as simplistic as feeding cattle, because I mean, feeding cattle is now how you drive cattle in a low stress way, how you move them from high value food environments that they might be wearing down on to another place that's fresh and good for them to be, how you move them from one location to another that might be safer given the current atmospheric conditions, how you check on the growth and development of the calves, how you see if there's anything that's moving through, as far as, diseases, cooties, whatever. Feeding is like this incredibly important moment of contact between the people who are raising and taking care of the animals and the animals themselves. And then a robot, if that interferes with the process, then what are you going to do? And you'd already thought all these things, right? Like you can't have a robot that just does one thing and just feeds it, because what are you going to do about all the information you get from the feeding? So you say it's just feeding, but you've accounted for all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing to point out is everything that can be done around a high value labor problem like feeding. So there's all these things that piggyback off of the very simple but high in value problem of supplement feedings. And so once you add autonomy to that and all the other technologies, you can get into everything that you were just talking about. And that's all a matter of preference for the rancher, whether you're using it to move cows or get cows in a certain spot at a certain time every time. If it's just to supplement, you're also doing that at the same time. You have a lot of operations require a certain amount of supplemental protein feed in order to meet gains and your yearling yield production. So, there's a ton that can be extrapolated off of a simple, off of the simple process of feeding and adding autonomy to that. It's just a bunch of things that nobody was going to do by hand, and technology is with the technology is able to step in and do it automatically, right? And so that's the. That's it. I think what you say and all these systems and methods that develop around this, I've thought of a lot, and my partners have thought of a lot, and we're always trying to push the boundary of what can be done. But I think it's going to be, this tool is going to allow people to to still continue to do things how they want. They're just going to be doing them better.
Right.
And so they may use them to move cows, or they may, who knows what they'll use it for. The thing is, this tool has a ton of abilities, and we don't even know what all they are yet, because there's some paradigms that haven't even been broken yet. And
right.
But because of it, we're going to see what happens. We have a bunch already that we've found on our own, but I guarantee you it's going to, the entire way that industry thinks about how they run an operation is going to change a lot due to technology like this and relative technologies too, and all of them working collaboratively and together is I think it's about to change the game. But maybe I'm too bold saying that. We'll see.
Well, and I know like the potentials. You talked about AI, vision, object identification, and all that in your systems. And I also know that you're grounded. When we joke about being idiots doing this stuff, I think what we really mean is we're just grounded. We started in meat space, and that's how we think. And then we use software and technology to streamline the inefficient parts of that, which is all to say, you're not proposing that the Terminator decides how much food we have to eat because it's robots running the show. But you've provided a platform for somebody to say, okay, these are the things that are most inefficient to me, and here's a platform that can take care of those things. But I'm still a rancher, and I'm still on the ground, and I still know my animals, and I still know my space, and I still know my dirt. And I just have a tool that makes the inefficient parts of that keep me away maybe sometimes from what I need to do. I've got a platform that knocks that out, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, there's this mundane part. There's a lot of mundane jobs in agriculture, and in the cattle industry. The supplement feeding is one of them. And the way I put it is, I call it it's a low value chore. I mean, what's it worth? It's worth $7.25 an hour. Hell, it ain't even worth that, but that's what minimum wage is. Thing is, can't get anybody to do it for that, but that's what it's worth, right? This is not,
Right.
it's not hard stuff. There's not a lot of computation going into that, not a whole lot of thinking. And now we'll get to the things like checking cows and stuff like that in a minute, but most of the time, about 80 to 90% of it is that lower value. And in that time that you're doing this lower value task, you could be doing higher value. So you got your $7.25 value task, which is feeding. And then, but in that 3 hours that day, or 12 hours a week, or whatever it is that you don't go out, that the rover saves you, that you're not having to go out and feed, that's time that you could be spending in an excavator, clearing pasture, or a dozer, or fixing fence or something. But especially on those higher value notes that you can actually get a lot done within that 3 hour block of time. That's $30, $40, $50 an hour work right there. Whenever you put these opportunity costs into a spreadsheet, as you should, this is a business, right? It is a business, and anybody that tells you it's not. You're not doing good things for the economy. But you start adding the numbers up, and it starts to definitely take a hit on your bottom line. Where you spend your time affects your bottom line. I'll put it that way. And if you don't get smart about where you
Right.
spend your time, then you can start seeing some negative returns just because of your time, the decisions you make with your time management.
Yeah. No, I mean, and again, it takes understanding the problem to make a good solution, right? And yeah, it's a low value job once you know the right way to do it, right? But I know stories of feeding that screwed things up. You put the feed in the wrong place because you think, oh, I'm just going to go put the feed out, because you don't understand what the long-term goal is. Even if it's just a long-term goal of getting from here to here by the end of the week, you put the feed in the wrong place, and that's where your animals are. And you don't need them to be there. Right. So it can be in a sense low value, but then it can be high consequence.
Yeah. Well, that's like
But
anything.
if you've got control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'd say that's like anything. Whenever I say low value, I mean in a very general terms, like that, with following the SOP that should already be established. Right. It's like you can turn to manufacturing, you can have a weak link on the assembly line and completely fuck up a manufacturing system. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what you're talking about, right? But if we're following the SOP, the machine should be able to do it.
Right.
You get what I'm
and
saying?
Machines generally, as long as you don't get too crazy.
Yeah.
They generally always follow the SOP.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what my point is that either way, you're either telling an employee to do it the right way, or you're telling a machine to do it the right way. Right. And whenever I speak past that point, as if we're doing the things that the person that's doing it knows how to do it, right? Or the machine we're not.
Yeah.
Now, but yeah, you do make a good point, right? Because I know where also you're trying to get to is that my familiarity with the problem and with the landscape of the problem, and or the environment of the problem and all the things associated with it. Yeah, because of that, we're able to tailor the programming and the UIs and the abilities of this equipment to best suit the rancher and give him the capabilities he or she needs to create, to program it in such a way that it is that machine that does what it's supposed to do, right?
Right.
Yeah, 1 second.
Right. And
I'm back. My AC kicked on. Anyways, okay.
insert commercial.
Yeah.
Insert commercial break.
Yeah.
No, and I mean, you've navigated the mistakes, not just in the technology, the important place to navigate the mistakes. You've navigated the mistakes in doing the job. In the times where, you're just starting, being introduced to this job you got to do, and you think you've got all the instructions, and you do what it is that you thought you were supposed to do as a young person, say, or doing a new job later, and you make that mistake, and then somebody comes up and goes, no, and then you realize, oh, I didn't have all the information. There's other factors that go into the job I have to do. And having navigated those, well, now you know what the machine also needs to consider when you're writing a machine to do the thing, which is, that's the beauty of somebody who's inside a space creating something for that space, is knowing the thing that really matters. That software doesn't matter. Software is just simplifying what is the case in the real world.
Yeah. No, you can't say any better than that. That's just the we've had this, we've come across this before, and the cost of failure to learn agriculture is much higher than the cost of failure to learn technology. So,
right.
So in my mind, agriculture developing, so people within agriculture developing technology is better for agriculture than people from within technology trying to develop technology for agriculture.
Right. No, that's absolutely right.
Because
absolutely right.
You're talking about, and I've been mocked before by a VC. He asked me if he could learn to ranch via YouTube, because I had told him that I learned a lot of my stuff. I was like, YouTube, Google, like everybody else. Come on, man. And
right.
And I was like, I knew he was mocking me, and I gave him a very tactful response back. But it was something along the lines of, yeah, you can. It just costs a lot more. I can spin up a software program. I can get an Arduino kit for $15. I can learn the majority of what technology is and what it has to offer through documentation and some relatively cheap, for the cost of a cow, I can get the equipment the hardware that I need to learn a ton. And you can spend, and you, to learn this trade, we'll have to spend $3 to $5 million on a small ranch, another $1 to $2 million on a herd, kill some, probably a good amount. Well, one, they're not very profitable to begin with. Yep. So, I'm not saying you can't. If you have the money, absolutely. It's just the cost of failure to learn it is astronomical compared to technology. So, it's to me, agriculture should be developing technology for agriculture, and
yep.
I think we're going to see a lot more of that as everybody's got internet now, and I think as these rural towns start to become more progressive in their education systems, start showing kids this, and to see that there's people like us that are doing it right, and hopefully that'll cause a little bit of drive, and we'll start to have a lot better technology rise from this that solve agricultural problems and probably even bring in some economical feasibility to it as well. You don't need an iPhone grade piece of technology. You don't need top tier tech, and I say this you don't need it. Right now, the Ranch Rover is a steel frame, steel platform. Very, very simple manufacturing. It doesn't need to be Great. It moves 3 miles an hour and it needs to move 4,000 pounds. We don't need it. We don't need an engineer in there that makes it into a Lamborghini. You know.
Right. Well, and there's a few soapboxes here that I know you're too polite to get on top of, and you're too smart to get on top of because you've got something that you need people to believe in. But I don't have a problem getting on those soapboxes, and then you could just say you disagree with me and call me an ass. That's fine. But the fact of the matter is if it wasn't somebody who knew the job building the technology, you damn sure would need a Lamborghini, because you need something that covers for all of the mistakes and lack of understanding and over-engineering the wrong things, right? If you know the job, it's not hard. If you know the problem and the solution, what the solution needs to be, and you know what the symptoms are versus the causes of the problems, then you can build something that's very small, very elegant, very simple, that does a better job than a space shuttle does. Right. And that's the thing that is infuriating to me about people who live in the world of technology, who pretend and need everybody to believe this fantasy that the world that they live in is a special and inaccessible world. When the fact of the matter is, the world you live in as a rancher or a farmer. I mean, I'm a huge fan. Me and the boy will sit down for hours and watch, what's that, Millennial Farmer up in Minnesota, right? And just watch farming. And I'm looking around like, okay, he can't do his job without that. That machine has got to be worth 3 times my house. And he can't do his job without that silo system that I'm never in my entire lifetime, unless I win the lottery, going to be able to have. And you look at all of these things down to just the individual tools. And I disagree with you. You cannot learn that stuff on YouTube, fella. I learned how to be an engineer in a dorm room without a computer. And so good that other engineers looked at what I did and said, hey, who did that for you? We think we want to pay him. And I said, you're looking at that idiot, right? Engineering can be learned. Technology can be learned. The real world, you were brought up in it and you had the benefit of lots of experience that introduced you to something that is, quite frankly, impossible for a lot of people. And to your point about animals, and you spend all that money and you drop a bag of cash and you want to get in it because you're rich and you're going to be a farmer or a rancher, right? You know about the animals. You care about them. People who raise animals, even if the end result is eating those animals, nobody cares about those animals and their well-being more than the people who raise them. So you try and deal with coming from the outside, dropping a bag of cash because you think you can teach yourself off of YouTube how to raise animals. You deal with what's going to happen when you kill 3-4 times as many animals before they fulfill their purpose, right? You try and deal with that heartbreak, right? And the understanding that you're the reason why, your hubris is the reason why these animals that somebody else would care about didn't make it to the finish line, right? To me, that's insanity. So that's my soapbox that you're not going to climb on. But people who don't know what the ag industry, they just drive me freaking nuts. Anyway,
well, I can cheer you on. Well, you can stand on that. I'll cheer you on that soapbox. I always leave open enough, right? That you know, there's good ideas that come from the outside as well, and we have to be careful to not gatekeep too much. I'm not saying we don't gatekeep at all, but I'm saying we don't need gatekeep too much, and that's why I stay off of that box. Is, you know, I know that. But, you know, if I say that to somebody, they may not bring up an idea that may have been a good one. You know, the one off. They might have had one. They might have had that 1 in 100, right? And so I have to, where I'm at right now, I see both sides of the spectrum. You know, I see both sides of the spectrum, and there's smart people on both sides, and the best way to be there is very humble in that aspect. There's some times though you need to step up for yourself and step up for the industry, and you pick those times wisely. You know when to do it. So But yeah, what you're saying is true. Most of it is true in a very general aspect. Yes, that is the untactful, not so tactful answer I could have given to the guy who asked me if he could learn to ranch on YouTube. And
I'll bookmark the timestamp, and then you can just forward it to him next time.
That's right. Hey, regarding this question, your question of.
No, and you're right. You can't gatekeep, but you navigated, right? And you introduced ideas and things. And I'm gonna take a shot in the dark, because I find that though you and I are very different people, I always found that we had a certain overlap. There's a reason why I'm wearing this shirt today. You know, like I remember. All right, so when I'm in the woods, I can't wear the kinds of shirts and clothes that I would normally just slip into it to run my day in, right? Because I got shirts I like. I don't want them all torn up. And so once Stack comes around and people are used to seeing me walk around with a camera and some crappy, boring old shirt, and they see me at Stack for the first time. I remember when you were around and you were the person that people knew. And the first time I show up to Stack in an evening where I'm not going to sweat it out, and they see me wearing what I'm wearing, they go, "You dress like River." So, which is to say, I think we have some cognitive overlap. And I'm going to guess that when you were approaching things in technology, where you knew that you needed to get from here to here, and Stack Overflow or whatever else was giving you some direction, you asked the question, well, why not do it like this? And I think that that's the humble way to ask the question. Why not? Why can't you do it like this? Why can't you have the robot do this? And then the expert nag can go, well, if it did that, then this and that and the other thing would happen. And when you ask the question about code, well, why can't you write it like this? Your genius rock star engineer can go, well, because then everything will blow up. Or, holy crap, I hadn't thought of that. You're right.
Yeah.
I think why not, basically. That's the way you ask questions, especially across expertise.
Yeah. I usually just ask why. I just ask why. I don't really need to do that. It's just a why. It's like people bring, it happens to me all the time, partner comes up, hey, I think we should bring this person on. And it's like, well, I do a certain amount of thinking for myself on that and diving into that before I say anything. But I always ask why. Like, what's your reason? Why? Like, what, you want to do this? Why? You don't want to do this? Why? And let's hear what's going on underneath, in your noggin, because I don't know if I like something or not till I have fully evaluated it, right? So
yeah,
that's if we take away that possibility. My biggest point is I can't take away that from anybody. I can't lead them. I can't make them feel as if it shouldn't be. As if they shouldn't say, because I think everybody should say. I think people growing up, they get told to shut up a lot, and or they ask a lot of people. I used to ask the stupidest damn questions, the stupidest stuff in college classes and whatnot. People thought I was an idiot. I just don't understand this, right? Like, my brain doesn't work that way. But anyway, end of the day, if you shut it down from very general terms, we won't hear everything. We need to hear everything, and then after we hear everything, we can say yay or nay, right?
Yeah,
and that's
and there's a safe way to shut things down.
Yeah,
right. There's the way of shutting things down. As a parent, I navigate this all the time, and I realize that Bonfire, so much Bonfire's process of leading and making decisions overlaps with being a parent, overlaps with a good Socratic professional approach to making decisions, which is, it looks a lot like shutting down. If you don't believe in your position, if you're the other person, it looks a lot like shutting down. But to me, it's safe. It's somebody says, let's do this. And then you go, if we do that, blank and blank is going to happen. It's not no. It's not stop talking. It's not go away. It's if we do this, blank and blank is going to happen. And if you don't believe in the thing that you just said, you're going to get your feelings hurt because you're going to think somebody said no and you're going to walk away. But if you nurture this understanding that I just explained to you why what you said could have consequences, now's the time where you tell me how you plan around those consequences. And if you can tell me how you plan around those consequences and I run out of consequences before you run out of answers, then guess what? We're going your way, not mine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you see that a lot. We can definitely sag into the Bonfire relationship here. You see that a lot. And I don't know about the dorms a whole lot, but you see within each levels, right? So you see that between like your, I would say like your piss pots and your butt pots. And you see that like your butt pots and like your whatever the next butt pot was, if there was one. And you see that between them and the junior red pots. And all the way through, it's kind of like you get like 2 generations of leadership. You get like 2 levels down and it's like, shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Right. Like, you still keep like this respect for what do you call it? Command, So right. You're not going to have like a piss pot come up to a jerk and be like, hey, I think it may be by the end of the season, yeah, but at first, or a fish, not even piss pot, like a fish come up, say something. It's like, yeah, no, like talk to somebody else about that, and maybe if it makes it up to me, we'll do something. But I think you saw it most, in my experience, I saw it most between the brown pots, the jerps, and the serps. Brown pots, junior red pots, senior red pots. There was all 3 of us, except but you never saw it between the junior red pots and the senior red pots, really, for good reason. There was, you saw it. It was there, but the brown pots usually served as a synthesizer there. Hopefully a lot of times we had those things taken care of by the time, the juniors had to get up to the seniors. And there's good reason for that. We don't have to dive into that, but there's just it's good it worked out like that. So as a brown pot, you really get to see, like, you really get to play it from both sides, right? It's like, there was a bunch of times that I was explaining why something doesn't work. And a lot of times when I was explaining to others why we did it that way. And so you definitely, the communication there was a lot more complex than between the other levels. At least in my experience, and probably speak for Austin, the rest of my buddies on this our brothers. And, you're constantly playing this game of saving, keeping some asses saved and keep protecting them from themselves. But yeah, heck yeah, sometimes those guys would have some good ideas too. Against contrary to popular belief, they had some good ideas every once in a while that caught us like, damn it, we got to do it. We got to do it that way. Sometimes they had some terrible ideas and they said, no, this is how it has to be done though, no matter what. So good luck.
Yeah. And it's interesting that dynamic of, the red pots and the brown pots and the junior red pots, sort of learning how to be red pots, but then coexisting and functioning most of the time with brown pots. And so there's sort of feet in both worlds, right? But there's this thing. I've never been good at predicting who a red pot's going to be, ever. It's from the first meeting on the hills in front of Walton, I'll tell you who the crew chiefs are going to be. I know it like that, but I can't ever predict who the red pots are going to be and who's going to be what way or whatever. And a lot of times, a lot of the people that I think they're going to be a red, well, they end up being brown, and vice versa. And a lot of times, I kind of feel like there's this understanding between those two groups sometimes, that if you were in my shoes, if things got switched up and you were a brown pot instead of a red pot, you would be thinking what I'm thinking right now. And then I would probably be thinking what you're thinking right now. Regardless of how much we know, you're going to learn things when you're doing my job, and I'm going to learn things when I'll be doing your job. And so it seems like there's a respectful dynamic to the disagreement.
Yeah, I think the what's going on in each other's, you got different priorities and you got different concerns going on in each head, on each side there, and and that's why I think just naturally the positions evolved into the way they did. Bonfire took a very natural approach to, in its evolution to leadership positions, or its evolution of leadership positions. And I think it's just the responsibilities and liability that certain positions face have forced everybody into this leadership situation, especially on the higher levels. I don't think that's like, it's almost like it's not by human design, is what I mean by that. Humans,
right.
The students, people, labeled it, but I think really, over a very general amount of time, this stuff has naturally evolved the way it is. And it goes back to that. You're going to have different minds. Those two are going to have different mindsets, and the way that they're going to see things in the current moment is going to be different. I think no matter what their skill set was, no matter if this guy was a brown and was just as capable as being a red, he may be a brown now, but that doesn't mean that he was going to be a red and be as good mechanically as a brown as he is as a brown now, right? And vice versa, right? So, there's just, I think that's why they're there and they're that way. And I think and you can relate that to everything in life. There's a reason that things are set up the way they're set up, and they tend to take a very, that approach. These systems are pretty relative too across the spectrum, in general, right? And Bonfire just really just highlights it, I think, and really just sets up the environment for that, to show that. I don't think anybody ever thinks of it like this deep, but to me, that's what's going on there. Like you got, multiple, different positions call for different personalities. So.
Yeah. And sometimes, it's the chicken or the egg debate. Right. There's people you look at and you say, okay, who I thought they were before they took this job is apparently different than who they are. Right. So something was worn off of them. An exterior is not there anymore. And I see who they really are. They're perfect for this job. And they always have been. And then there's some people who you look at and you realize that they've just been transformed. They were something, and now they're something else. Right? And so it's fun to consider, right? The development of the personalities and their skills and perspectives. Are they where they are because that's what they were and it was obvious? Are they where they are because that's what they were, and like a salmon swimming upstream, they can't explain it, but that's where they wound up? Or are they who they are because they were changed when they became, took this new role? It's interesting. You write a dang book about it.
Yeah. I personally think it's a transcendence of who they were before, which is both a change and who they are. Nobody starts out walking, or running. It's you transcend who you are. I think you just bunch of experiences. And now you can now Bonfire, I think things like Bonfire, they definitely expedite that transcendence. In my mind, you're getting to who you really are, like where you're gonna be at the end of the day. You're stepping up that ladder, or I wouldn't call it stepping, but you're going there a lot quicker through your Bonfire experience. Then it's morphing you into that a lot faster than most people of that age are doing with relative to what the experiences they have, right? So
for sure,
yeah.
I'm reminded of I got in hot water with Dr. Chris Townsend at in the ag school. Dr. Chris was still there when you were there, right?
I don't know.
Were you what was your degree in?
Construction. Mine was construction science.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I made an assumption. Yeah. I made an assumption there. Dr. Chris was in the ag school. Dr. Joe, her husband, was a dean, and Dr. Chris was the head of the ag leadership school. And ag leadership is what I graduated with. And I would have graduated on time if I'd have found that degree to start with, because it's just such a good program. I'm glad I didn't find it that soon. College would have been boring. But, business, I did business, sport management, whatever, and Bonfire, then had to take a break. Then come back and I go into ag leadership, and it's fascinating. But one of my first classes, the teacher gets up and she says, I'm going to teach you all about leadership. I'm going to make you a leader. I'm going to teach you into a leader. And I went up and I said, this all sounds very fascinating. Because I'm an ass, I'm like, this all sounds very fascinating. But I just want you to know, not like you care or you should, but you're going to take some convincing for me, because I don't think you can teach this. I think you can refine it in somebody, but you can't teach it. And then she sent me to Dr. Chris, and Dr. Chris is like, what the hell? Why am I even here if I can't teach you leadership? Like, what is our program even for? I said, well, no, your program's great. It's perfecting leaders. It's teaching them the qualities that they need to build up and the qualities that are conflicting. And you're making leaders, people who are leaders already, you're giving them the tools to apply those things. You're attracting good leaders. That's why you produce so many good leaders, is you're attracting them. She said, oh, that sounds like a doctoral thesis. I said, it's taken me 6 years to get not graduated, so no extra schooling for me. But it speaks to your point, right? Like, sometimes you wind up where you are because that's where you should be, and that's what you are, and you just don't know it yet.
Yeah. No, that I don't know why. We're not getting the spirituality of it or anything, but that's about how my life is. You end it. It just kind of turns out. Well, as long as your principles are in place, right? And principles being, where you're going. It's like Bonfire. Your principle is that, like, it's gonna light on burn night. All right, that's your hierarchical, like, that's your pinnacle. And if we stick to that, and all the shit that happens in here, right? No matter what, slowdowns, I don't know, going to jail, breaking sick, or there's all kinds of crazy stuff that could happen just from being, and it could result from being undisciplined. It could result from bad luck, from chance. No matter what, it doesn't matter what happens, as long as that pinnacle is in place and that, your principles are in place, that's going to happen. And everything just tends to funnel up towards the top there and make it there. But if you don't keep that in mind, if you don't keep those principles in mind, that's just total lack of I just say total lack of self-accountability and self-responsibility is when you do that, is when you just don't give a shit about anything anymore. Like, you don't care. Like, that's like a deadbeat person, doesn't care about anything anymore. And once you do that, then yeah, it's probably not going to happen, or at least not for you. It's not going to happen. So, I think you're right. Things that you end up where you're supposed to be, as long as you have those underlying principles in place, at all times. Otherwise, yeah, you probably will end up just being another druggie on the street, if we're going to be quite frank, right? And sometimes you're supposed to end up there, but I'd say oftentimes it could have been avoided.
Or, I mean, what it seems, what do you call it? Rationalizing or whatever, sour grapes. But I can't think of a more miserable existence than spending your life doing something that you're not supposed to do. Even, you become a millionaire and then you regret all the other things that you felt like you needed to do. And you show up every day and you type, or you do whatever it is you do, but that's not what you're supposed to do. You got focused on success or whatever else it was. So there are people who are tremendously successful because they're fulfilling what they've been called to do. And successful in the, common sense, right? And there are people who've got big houses and boats and all this stuff who are miserable.
Yeah.
And there are people who are living, busking on a street corner who are happy beyond measure.
Yeah.
So,
there's a lot.
Like you
say,
it's those principles.
Yeah. And principle. I think you're right. I think if you wander from it.
But you've got to, and Bonfire's got this really crafty way of putting that carrot on the end of the stick. Mm-hmm. Like you talk about, burn. You put the carrot on the end of the stick, you got burn. We're going to burn it. It's going to be huge. It'll be the biggest fire you've ever seen. It'll be so neato. And you focus on that and you're just, I'm going to build the biggest fire there's ever been. And then that's all you're focused on. And you don't realize your Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi, is wearing a red or a brown pot telling you to wax on, wax off. And you're just, all right, wax on, wax off. And then it's over and you realize, oh man, I've learned how to lead. I've learned how to follow. I've learned how to do a particular physical task I've never thought of. I've learned how to dig something outside of me that I didn't know was in there. Moreover, I didn't even know that I knew how to dig inside of me. And I know how to do that now. And I've known how to talk to different people. And I've learned when to yell and when to whisper. All of that. I've learned I'm a leader. I've learned I'm a director. I've learned I'm a visionary. I've learned I'm somebody who dots the I's and crosses the T's, whatever. Everybody learns something different and they're all marching towards the same. And at the end of the day, it's just a carrot on the end of the stick.
To me, it's the most controlled but uncontrolled leadership environment. And it outlines, it outlines, like I said, it naturally outlines the structure of the leadership to accomplishment, situation, I guess we could say. So you got
right.
You got leadership and everything, and then you also are completing something, reaching an accomplishment, and it's all done, right? But in the real, like past college, I say the real world, but we work on project after project after project, and you kind of get caught in like the minutiae. You can't really see through it all, right? You can't see what the forest for the trees or the trees for the forest or however that goes. You can't really see that like evolving leadership structure. It's never been pointed out to you, so you can't see it. And Bonfire, what that does is that experience there lets you, by the time you get done, you see it, right? And then you can go into the job market, the workforce, whatever you want to call it, and you're pointing out all the little bonfires. I just call everything, like all these little projects at work or whatever it is, I call them little bonfires, right? To that next promotion is a little bonfire, right? And so you're probably going to iterate through probably most of the same steps as you did, no matter what positions you held at Bonfire, you're going to make it all the way through at least a few times. And look, you may not have been a brown pot or a red pot at Bonfire, but because of Bonfire, and you can see that you now understand visually, can conceptualize the structure in your head, you're more than likely going to be a red pot or a brown pot in the business environment, right? I mean, like, I have like speaking experience. I was a red pot in Bonfire, but now I'm the equivalent of that as with Smooth Ag. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's all. And I would say that a majority of that is because of my experience in Bonfire. There's a ton of problem solving abilities that I have that I consciously relate back to my experience there. And that's not something that I can, that we should, that I should take for granted or look over, right? You can't do it. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't naturally have problem solving skills. I came from agriculture, right? It's like I was saying just a little bit ago, we transcend who we were before. And that's what I mean by that. I came from agriculture. We problem solve all the time, but it didn't get highlighted and pulled out of me in a demanding way until I was a sophomore and junior in Bonfire, right? Whenever those problem solving skills started having timelines and deadlines, and like whenever we had to pull 23 hours, 24 hours, 28 hours, 2 or 3 times in a matter of weeks, in a matter of a week or two, and fixing stuff and getting stuff ready. You don't get that experience unless you're, pretty much unless you go to the oil field or something like that. And very rarely do you get that experience while you're in college. So, that's those are all things that I don't think people really, and maybe even some people don't even, who are involved with Bonfire, that I don't think they quite understand that or see it that way yet. And I think, after listening to this, that I hope that's something that we can make people more aware of, and it should add to the legitimacy of the program, of the organization, and it absolutely should. It's not just a bunch of kids stacking up pieces of wood and cutting trees down in the forest acting like jackasses. I mean, yeah, that's what it is on the surface. You go out there and you just look and you just walk on the surface of it. That's what you're going to think. And I think a lot of students don't realize that it's anything past that until there's some maturity involved. But I think if listening to something like this, what me and you are talking about right now, as far as other organizations having respect for it and older faculty having respect for it, and even other students and with other organizations having respect for it, if they know anything, here's the thing: if you know anything about real life, Bonfire is the closest thing you're going to get on, within that university, realm that you're going to get to really highlighting real life situations, after school situations that require you to have the grit and the fortitude, and the smarts, like the intelligence, the problem solving skills to do the hard things and do them and accomplish them on time, right? Like there's no, at the end of the day, failure is not an opportunity, right? Like it's not a chance. Like there's no, what is it? Failure is not an option. Failure is an option. Yeah. And that doesn't mean you don't fail along the way, but at the end of the day, you gotta complete the project, right? And that's real life. At the end of the day, you gotta complete the project and within the timeline and on budget, or you're gonna get fired, or you're gonna fail. You're gonna fail at the end of the day. Fail.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. That's one of the really cool things about Bonfire, that there's some really cold-blooded ways that Bonfire frames things, right? Like, we only burn it after you've put that carrot on the stick, and come on, guys, we're going to build the biggest fire you've ever seen, right? And the people that just show up for burn, they're going to leave going, that's the biggest fire I've ever seen. That's all they're going to be thinking. But everybody who built it, they're watching it burn and they're going, yes, now we get to build another one. If they hadn't been introduced to it, they'd have been in that crowd going back to Northgate, going back to town, going, that was the neatest fire. It was so big. But everybody who built it's going, we get to build another one. That's cold-blooded. when that carrot on the stick, you realize, oh, that was a ploy. That was a ruse. That's not the thing. The fire is not the thing. The fire just makes room for another one. That's cold-blooded. And the other cold-blooded thing is failure is always an option. It is always an option, whether you want it or not. You got to understand every single thing you do. Failure is an option. Left foot, right foot. Failure is an option. You've just got to not choose that option. And if that option chooses you, then you've got to persist past it, because ultimately failure is not an option when you decide that it's not. But at every step of the way, you better accept that there's some things that no matter how well you do them, failure is an option that will be imposed upon you, and you've got to persist through it. That's foreign to so many people. People will retire never learning that lesson professionally, that failure is always an option, and it's up to you whether or not you allow your most recent failure to be the place where you stop.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's cold-blooded.
Yeah. I agree with that. That's the. I would like to say that's the way I was thinking on that. Failure isn't an option, but yes, that's correct. Thanks for clearing that up, because
it's true. It's true both ways. Yeah. It's true both ways.
Right.
Like,
well, results. Okay, not achieving the end result is not an option if you want to do it again. I guess that's a better way.
It's one of those things that if somebody puts a camera, and if somebody puts a camera in your face, right, some media, and they've got 5 seconds, and you got 5 seconds to say the thing, you're going to look at it, and you're going to be stern. You're going to go, failure's not an option. But when internally after the camera goes away, you're going to turn around to everybody who's listening to you and go, you better understand failure is always an option, whether you want it to be or not. And it's up to you whether you push past it.
Yeah.
That doesn't fit in a soundbite.
No, it don't.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
But, I mean, and so, I think we talk about, there's never going to be anything like it. I think I've heard your dad say it. I've heard other people besides your dad say it, contemporaries. I've heard people from years before and years after him. It speaks to the fact that it's just a truth. You spend the rest of your life after you've done this pursuing something that is this hard.
Yeah.
When you've gotten to that level, the level that you got to, the level your dad got to, the level so many people have gotten to, you spend the rest of your life trying to find something that hard. And a lot of people, you can forgive some folks for talking about the glory days because they've just never found anything that hard, and they've been trying. They've really been trying, and they just can't ever find anything as hard as the thing they did when they were college kids.
Yeah. No, that's the, they, I remember one time I was telling you, this, and I was talking to Jim, and I was like, man, Dad, I just want to, I'm just trying to find something that I just want to do something that was, as hard as Bonfire. I've just been trying to find that. And he was like, me too, son. And I told you this, one of our first ones that got deleted. But yeah, that's once you kind of get that bug, it kind of, I don't know if it ruins you or makes you better, but I'm going to go with makes me better. And if you do the Bonfire thing, if you do it and you make it and you do it hard, it'll kind of create this habit in you. And I don't know what it is, but these guys do hard, like Donnie being a lawyer, Sid and Austin.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the Red Pot Austin. Can't remember his last name. Lawyer. Sid Superintendent construction, probably going to be a lot more. Probably going to be a lot more. Austin, one of my buddies, project manager. Rest of the guys are working in some kind of management job. One guy, babysitter, I think, is in the oil field. So you don't come out and just do, Joe Blow stuff. You can't. You don't know how to do Joe Blow stuff. At least the majority of people that come out of it. You get some that do. It's fine. That's what they like to do. Some guys, it's all right. They just like to chill.
Yeah,
and that's okay.
And they've gotten their life's quota of not chilling, and they're okay with going. All right, I've experienced what not chill is, and I'm cool.
Yeah.
But there's still, hell, even the guys that like to chill, honestly, they chill with an intensity that other people do not chill at. Like their focus and determination with chilling is weird.
Yeah, they don't watch TV. Like the chillers that I know are out, like they got the fishing boat out on at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday, and I'm like, I'm not. See, me after my hard days of work, I'm just trying to watch some TV, right? Just turn on some Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy's over here. He just chilled at work all day, but he ain't chilling after work. He's got his little John boat out there. So yeah, it's a great.
There's that void.
Yeah, you gotta do something. But yeah, the bonfire experience. Whenever you relate it across the spectrum, it's really it's a hard one to it's a hard one to beat. Like you're saying, Jim was saying, all the other guys were saying it, and part of why I think you're having this podcast, or part of why we're having this conversation, is to help. I won't say outsiders, but yeah, basically outsiders, and some of the insiders. Hey, understand that. Hey, this is. Now we're talking to people that are in real life now, like that are past this and are doing hard things and doing cool things and I don't know, doing normal things. But most of everybody is is on a decent, has a decent success story, and in my experience, I know more successful people that were in Bonfire, and I say our stereotypical successful person has gone through, was in Bonfire. I know most of the close, I'll just say close, let's say very wealthy people that I know that I have shaken hands with, and have a personal relationship with are Bonfire people, and I know that's why. And I know that's also probably why a lot of the same practices and methods that they use within their business are very similar to their Bonfire practices and methods, right?
Yeah.
And so, if we want to talk about legitimacy of an organization here and what it has to offer students and anybody, that's I think everything we just talked about, you can't get. I don't know if you can come up with a better argument besides maybe talking to some other guys that are a lot more experienced than me, like Jim. He'd probably make a much better one. But
yeah, well, and the two Jims, your dad, Jim McTasney, my buddy Jim, Braz's Wi-Fi in town.
Oh yeah,
successful people who, and not only that, but they know how to share success. And they know how to impart it on other people. And those other people don't necessarily even have to be Bonfire people, because not everybody's a Bonfire person. It's just not. It wouldn't be worth a damn if anybody could do it.
Well, yeah.
But they know how to impart it on other people, which would, brings to mind the question, right? Like, clearly your dad helped develop who you are as a person. But was there ever any time where it was specifically, son, this is Bonfire and this is what it is, and you need to find it, and you need to do it, and here's all the glory days stories, and you can live in my shoe prints and whatever. Did that ever happen?
Yeah, no. I think the last time I had a bonfire experience with my parents was before I came to college, was 98 or 97. One of the two. I remember it's my first. I remember the first like 97s, I guess. I was like 2 or 3 years old, and I remember them lighting the fire. Like that's my first memory ever. No shit. That is my first memory ever, is watching this like big thing. These guys like walk up with these torches and then yell and throw it in there. Right. It's very blurry. And then I remember a second time, and I think this was the next year. I think this was 99 before it fell. There's some core turds out there rolling around in the mud and shit like that. Got a picture, and I just barely remember these guys rolling around in the mud. But after that, you heard about it. It fell, and then you kind of have a memory of that. But after that, Jim wasn't really. He knew about student bonfire, but even then, I don't think he was and he didn't have a problem with it. But even then, he wasn't like go, and it didn't really get talked about much after that. Besides some basic physics questions that curiosity. And even those were kept pretty short. Now, of course, you can't say that I didn't have a connection. There's some familiarity with it. I grew up with bonfire stories all around me, but nobody was like, I needed to go have an experience like that. The only experience that I had to do was be in the Corps if I was going to attend Texas A&M, because they didn't think I'd pass my classes otherwise, which is fair. So I found bonfire. I found bonfire on my own, and hell, probably a little bit reluctant, maybe even a little bit more reluctantly, because it was student bonfire. Not everybody was it may not have held as much legitimacy in my mind and most other kids' minds at the time, because their dads said it wasn't real. Most of them, their dads being nobody who really participated in bonfire to begin with, but but yeah, I went out there. My butt paw was like, your dad was a red pot. You're coming. And I was like, all right, whatever. So they drugged me out there, and I was like, oh, hell yeah, this is kind of badass. I ain't going to lie. And then once it kind of spun up, the red pots of the time found out that Jim was a red pot. It just kind of was like, I had some things going in my favor to make it a little bit more exciting. Right. Yeah. Once I got there, which was cool, like you can't ignore those things, right? You can't say that they weren't there, but I didn't ever abuse them. Like I said before, I've never called a log. I never
right, which shocked me when you said that.
Yeah, I've never.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I never tried to be a leader out there. You know what I mean? Like I just was like, hey, maybe we should just. Now there'd be some situations where I'd be like, it'd make more sense if we did this thing this way. That's just my problem solving going on. It's like take it or leave it, and that's kind of, and honestly, it wasn't even that got me on the route that I got on. The main thing that got me on the route that I got on is because sophomore year, freshman year, I didn't have a vehicle. Sophomore year, I brought the I bought our 3/4 ton diesel flatbed pickup down, and I was driving that to cut site, and I lucked out, and enough pickups had broke down that they needed to ask somebody to haul some log, or if they can use my truck, and I was like, you can use my truck, but I'm driving, and that kind of got me behind the scenes a little bit. Blow a tire or something like that, I'd just do it. And so, you kind of get recognized that way. And, so that was kind of my fast-paced deal through Bonfire, is I really wasn't a leadership guy in the woods. I was just a problem solver. That's really what it was. and I didn't. And then as a Brown, the leader, I served leadership in the way of everybody in the woods thought I was an asshole, and I was pissed off all the time, and I was a straight dick out there because I was always thinking about all the problems that had to be solved elsewhere. And it was funny because everybody thought, and I probably was a little bit more mad because they all knew it got under my skin when everybody went around saying that River doesn't do anything. So I'd be all mad, and so I got like this leadership experience that was not of the masses. It was more of a
Right.
lead by example, solve and lead by example type. It's like people, the Red Pots would ask me or have respect for me, not because not necessarily because they like me as a person, but because of the amount of problems that I'd solved beforehand. Right. And I'm not trying to like be conceited in any way. That's just the only way. I wouldn't have had any respect towards me if I hadn't solved problems before. Like if I didn't have a track record of solving problems, and I can probably say the same for Austin, because Austin was kind of an ass too.
Yeah.
So Rocha. So, that's kind of my Bonfire story from childhood to the end there, all in about 2 minutes.
Yeah, and obviously, I already knew the answer to the question of if your dad talked to you about it. I find, because I've asked him, and hell, you and I have talked about it. I find that so many dads, that's a common position. Like this is this thing, and I did it, and it was crazy. And there's this secret, like, oh man, I want to share that with my son. Or daughter. I want to have the conversation one day about the things that they're doing that I remember doing, and have that moment, and then know all the things that they're going to learn that I'm grateful that I learned. And right. But it's somehow not as great if they're there because you put them there. There's something magical about when your kid chooses the path that you went down rather than you putting them on that path. And, the rewards, it's awesome. But like we talk about it on the subject of other things, right? Sometimes you wind up going down a path that you didn't know you were supposed to go down. And it's because of who you are and who made you who you are. Well, your folks. And without even intending to, you put something in somebody, and you might say you weren't a leader, but there've been people who solve problems that nobody wants to deal with them. You go to them and you go, how do you solve this problem? And then you walk away because you just can't deal with them. And they don't have the personality that affects those solutions. They just solve the problems. You get what the solution is, and then you go apply it someplace else. It takes a rare person to make it so that those problems are solved and those solutions are applied and everybody feels good about it and everything's done the right way. So you can say you're not a leader all you want. The fact was you were. Same with Austin. Same with everybody.
Yeah.
There's some people couldn't solve a problem. They couldn't solve themselves out of a paper bag, but hell, they lead. Yeah.
I know some of them. I'm not going to name drop or anything, but I know one or two of those. They're great friends. I worked very close with them 1 or 2 years there in college. And, but
yep.
It's good though. There's and that goes all the way down to there's just certain places for certain people at certain times. And that's where we all ended up there at that time. I didn't need to convince the whole damn crowd to follow me. I just needed to make sure that certain guys understood why why this was the best way to do this, or how to do this the best way. Right. I was wrong too a lot. Let's not get that wrong. Like let's not leave that out, but as long as you're doing more, like my granddad's told me, he says, as long as you're doing more good than bad, it's going to be all right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which puts so much emphasis on buddies, right? Because if you don't have buddies that can compliment you or disagree with you, can be complimentary, not nice. You know, somebody can go, River, that's a horrible idea. Jim, my buddy Jim, came and helped me put up a pole for a zip line for my kids. First pole we've raised in almost 20 years. And he brings his tractor out and we raise it. And immediately the dynamic was exactly the way it was then, where I'm like, why don't we do this? And then he's like, because that's dangerous and stupid. Right.
yeah.
And then maybe I might go, well, what if we did this? And then he could go, okay, that's not going to kill anybody. Right. Because we had the dynamic where we could have feedback and whatnot.
You got this. Like,
if I'd put that pole up myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
May not be a Dion.
If I'd have raised that pole 2 weeks ago or 20 years ago by myself, I wouldn't be alive.
Yeah. It's a hard, that working in harmony. But, and that also brings up another point.
Especially if both of you were there because of you're there because you have strong personalities.
Yeah.
And what's the other point? What does it bring up?
Oh, yeah. Just the relative to the business world, right? I mean, I would go to say that it's very hard to get through the business pipeline or life cycle without a partner of some sort. And you got to find one that's just the same as some of those best buddies or the ones that are not necessarily your friend, but they're they're the best guy to have around. And they're not. And I think what was neat about like Bonfire is you're not scared to tell people what you think at that level. As brown pots and red pots, like as we talk to each other, there's no place for feelings, right? There's no don't care about being offensive and whatnot, and it's the same way in like business. You got to be able to. You got to have that other person. You don't know everything, and you're not always right, and you got to have that other person that just see a second set of eyes and a second brain and a second perspective that is always, asking you why, and you're always asking him why, and you're just constantly doing this harmonic, just back and forth communication to get to the end goal. I did that best when I was a brown pot, probably with Austin, Rosha. Me and him hummed pretty well together, and the other guys had their guys that hummed pretty well together, and it all worked out like that. So yeah, I may subdivide and whatnot, but my biggest point is that is relative to across the business spectrum as well, and the business environment is you're always going to be in that situation where it takes a team, right? And sometimes it takes another person or two at your same level that you kind of that you can't be scared to talk. There's not really a what do you call it, a hierarchy there. There's not really a hierarchy between you and a partner. There is eventually somebody's got to make the final decision. You always got to have that, but it's a lot less of I'm in charge and you're not, and more of if I talk, you're going to listen, and if I talk, you're going to listen type thing.
Yeah. But still, even in those environments professionally where you're put in a space and paired with people, you find, especially with Bonfire people, that experience, it starts to evidence itself. When you're in a group of people, future professionally, and then people start talking, and then you realize a brand new team 2-3 weeks down the road, all of a sudden people are looking to you to say, all right, what do we do, or who should we listen to now? All right, which becomes a responsibility. One of the things you learn as a leader at Bonfire too. a responsibility to make sure that everybody else feels the rewards of them trusting you.
Yeah.
Right. And so you don't just get to be made dictator by everybody. You got to make them feel good about their decisions. And there's so much art in it, man. It's just,
yeah, there's a ton. We could talk about like this stuff for weeks.
Yeah.
And, but I don't have weeks. No. Hell, but at this point, conversations like this, at this point, you should just want to go. I would say you just want to go check it out for yourself. You won't have to listen to anybody talk about it for weeks. You can just go do it. It's a lot more fun. I mean, that's what I'd recommend to anybody. It's like people are like, why? And I just tell them, just go out there. Just one day. And what worst case scenario, you lose a day.
Right. The best answer is always, I've got shit to do because I'm doing this. So I don't have time to explain it to you. So you just go do it. And then that's going to be the best answer you're going to have too. 10 minutes later, you're going to be like, I can't explain it. Just do it.
Yeah. Just go ahead. Get out there. But.
Well, River, like you say, you got stuff to do. Changing the world. Like I said, becoming a celebrity on podcasts. I see it all the time. Smooth Ag, River McTasney on another podcast. It's huge stuff, man. And like I say too, I mean, everything you're doing now is already amazing enough. And anytime I ever saw or thought something and we happened to be on the phone, or I saw and I texted you, every single time you're like, yeah, I had that thought like 6 months ago. Don't worry. There's so much more behind what you're doing already, which is extraordinary enough. And I'm looking forward to watching it unfold. Everybody that's ever built Bonfire, especially those people who knew you, we're all really looking forward to watching this develop. It's huge, man. And it's grounded and it's right. And it's awesome. So thank you for taking the time that you don't have a whole hell of a lot of to have this conversation. And as somebody who loves Bonfire, thank you for everything you did when you were participating in and leading it.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Dion, for the good little pep talk you had there. And thanks for doing what you do to make sure this thing keeps humming. We got to come back and talk some shit to guys every once in a while, and that's where we do it. Yeah, I stopped showing up to the woods.
Hey, that's smart. That's smart. Because then the legend does all the work.
That's right. That's right.